Good afternoon to everyone. Today we have quite a broad representation from all over the world, from Uganda to Kazakhstan, France, the UK, and the rest of the world. So welcome to everyone and to our three panelists today for this fourth edition of I Meet Hotel webinar. My name is Caroline Dal'lin and I'm Director of Business Development at Bidroom. And I Meet Hotel, as a reminder, is an initiative of Bidroom, your no-commission booking platform. So I will introduce you first to our panelists before we get started. So today, this webinar will feature Chris Glabinski, who's Chief Business Development Officer at Libratech. Hi, Chris.
Hello. Hello, Caroline. Hello, everyone.
Also with us, we have Ryan Hens, Director and Lead Consultant at Hens Marcoms. Welcome, Ryan.
Hi there, Caroline, and thanks for inviting me along today. Look forward to speaking to you all.
And we also have with us Ali Beklen, founder and managing partner at HotelRunner. Hi, Ali, and welcome.
Hi, Caroline. Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
So in our last edition, we covered briefly how technology is now emerging to ease operation for hospitality and travel services, as more than ever, this situation is accelerating the change towards, we're going to talk about it obviously today, a contactless experience, for example, which brings actually an opportunity for a faster, more convenient, more personalized guest experience. So we're gonna touch this subject with our three panelists, and the conference will run for 1 hour, which includes 3 times 15 minutes presentations and 5 minutes Q&A after each presentation. So feel free to ask your questions, comment on the Q&A feed here in Zoom or in the chat, and we will answer your questions at the end of each presentation. So today we'll get started with Chris Glabinski, again, Chief Business Development Officer at Libratech. And Libratech prides itself to be the most innovative revenue management team in the hotel industry. And today you will tell us how you can reinvent yourself in this crisis as a hotelier, or you can reinvent your revenue for tomorrow's logic. So Chris, we're listening to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, hello, everybody. Today I will be, let me just see if I can change my screens. There you go, it works. The reason why I've called this presentation that is about technology and the future of hospitality, Reinvent for Tomorrow's Logic, is in fact the tomorrow's logic that is that I'm really keen to speak about. I have taken this this term, paraphrasing Peter Drucker's quote, when he said that the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence itself, it is to act with yesterday's logic. And now, as we are in the situation where still most of hotels are in the turbulence, there's not much we can do about it, we somehow starting to see the lights in the tunnel where hotels will be reopening, the lockdowns will be unlocking. So we will be stepping out of the turbulence, and it's very important to understand what's going to be out there. It's very difficult to speculate what it will be out there, but we definitely need to understand that yesterday's logic is not going to be applicable anymore. And here's why. So a quick look at the European part of the world. Since 2nd of May, a lot of countries are starting to have reached the peaks and now starting to reopen. Big countries, the most affected countries like Italy, Spain, and France are planning to unlock very soon. More central and eastern part of Europe has already opened or is opening nowadays. So now we are entering this phase where we have the new tomorrow. And the new tomorrow is going to be affected, obviously, by international travel. So as countries are opening up themselves, in fact, until we open the international traveling, there will be consequences still. We will be, the hotels will be based on domestic production only. What hotels have to face now is something that has never happened before, I guess. This is a slide of a hotel 2020 performance versus budget. And you can see the green bars are every month of what hotel has planned to achieve in terms of revenue. You can see some of these bars are actually hitting almost 500,000 euro monthly revenue. And the blue bars is what hotels are actually achieving. So you can see how it dumped the hotel. And there's many, many hotels in the situation like that. And you can see towards November, December, it's not really picking up yet. We observe that and we try to see how it's going to look. But even if we take the same trend, and here's just a graphic trend, and if we mirror that trend of how from January to July everything dropped, and if in the same direction it will start picking up from July onwards, you can see that there will be a lot of missed revenue. So it's basically like 2020 is going to be is basically gone. So hotels face this situation while starting to reopening in some countries differently without international part of the customer. And the new tomorrow that is out there, from what I can see, is mainly based on emotions and logic. And as we have these two parts of the brain, this is what we're going to be. This is what we're going to be following in the next couple of months, at least. The emotions will tell us that hotels can open, will open, but then when the logic kicks in, well, maybe not all the hotels will reopen. And we see from our customers already cases that they are not necessarily willing to open unless the demand is going to come. Spanish hotels, for example, say there's no point opening hotels on the 11th of May if there will be no British tourists coming in, because it will not be, it's not going to make sense business-wise. And also the customers will emotionally think, once the lockdown is over, I'm going to travel like crazy. But then again, the logic will kick in. And then people will start thinking about if they really have to travel or not. You know, we have the government lockdowns now, but I think there will be a lot of economic lockdowns as well, because people will be economically affected. And the first spend that they will limit will be the easy spend, like traveling. A lot of people will postpone probably to next year, which means that again, this 2020 is like a hole in the history. And emotions will tell us that if the governments tell us, okay, it's safe, so it's safe to travel, but we will also wonder, is it safe really or not? You know, not wearing a mask was safe, then wearing a mask was a must, so it was not wearing a mask was not safe. So we really are driven and mixed with emotions and logic. And being a Polish, living in Spain, and then working for an Italian company and speaking English, I watch 4 different news channels. And I can see how differently each countries are communicating the current situation of COVID-19. So within the European countries, we actually can see that our philosophies will be impacted by what we know, what we read, how we emotionally approach that, and how logically we think, which means that anything we had in the past, everything that we based in revenue management and in the way we managed our businesses, is going to change. The yesterday's logic that we have was based on past data. It's not going to be valid anymore. We used to have a common behavior within customers, which we divided into segments, and according to segments, we applied different revenue management tactics. That's not going to be valid, because people are mixing the emotions within the logic, and they're going to come back at a different time and at a different scenarios. And therefore, if the past data is not then, segmentations is not reliable anymore, we're going to have to learn the new segments. The forecasting that we did so far is not going to be reliable anymore. And therefore, the price algorithms based on those forecasting, they're not going to be reliable anymore. So we do have to have this yesterday's logic that already is not going to be working. And the opening hotels right now, having this big cost issue, having the new customer in front of them, which they don't really know, because they have to learn that once they open, the new demand and the new safety features is going to put us in a completely new world. The safety is not only about disinfecting the rooms or safety of travel. The safety is also in terms of distribution and price rules and ability to have flexibility of that travel. So the new approach to costs, demand, and the safety is all the new ideas that we will have to explore in order to see how we face our business. However, we all know that we cannot afford to risk anymore. So whatever we do is going to have to be really, really perfect, because whoever thinks that the yesterday's logic is going to work may actually observe a big wrecking ball coming at them. So we need to reinvent for what's going to happen tomorrow. And here's a couple of ideas for how that tomorrow's logic is going to work and how we have to reinvent. According to the surveys that we did before COVID-19, within a few hundred of revenue managers, we realized that their work can be described to have to spend 75% of time on analyzing, grabbing and analyzing the data, and then only 25% of time spending on actually making changes of the prices. That's going to have to change, because the markets and the demands and the customer will be so fast that we are not going to be able to spend 70% of our time 3 weeks in the month to actually have 1 week of price changes. A lot of a pricing approach was based on rules-based formulas. So if the occupancy was 80%, I would apply this price. If it's below 80%, it's this price. That will not necessarily work. A lot of our capacity will be constrained from the government's perspective. A lot of the capacity will be constrained because we will need to sacrifice 3 days of rooms after the checkout in order to disinfect it. So it's not going to be applicable anymore. 20% of all the calculations that we did based on the data of the past is not going to work. We did use to override all these calculations in 65% of time by using our pricing experience and intuition. And that is not going to work either, because if we don't know what's going to happen, we're going to be as close as just guessing. So really addressing the tomorrow's logic is going to be about technology, and technology that will help us getting all the mysterious parts that we have been dealing with so far, comfortably dealing so far, that is going to help us. So technology is no longer a nice to have commodity. It's going to be critical for us to use. And in terms of revenue management, that critical thing is going to have to be a real-time reaction. Now, customer driven by emotions or rationale will be changing all the time. So we need to realize the fact that basing spending and time learning past behaviors is not going to work. We have to be like real-time adapting to what's happening within the demand. We're going to have to complement the lost data from the hotel with some other data, specifically with the demand data, because that's the first point that we can see when the pickups will be coming or not. And the third thing is that if we're dealing with real time and if we're dealing with bigger data than ever, we're going to have to apply artificial intelligence solutions, because the traditional calculations are not going to cover the correlation between the different types of data that we will be processing, and especially in not in that frequency. So if the intuition will be close to guessing, we're going to have to rely on technology more than ever before. And apparently revenue management is the area where I think finally this is where it's going to make a drastic change, because for the last 30 years, only about 20% of hotels were using some sort of technology for driving the prices. I think now it's going to boost, and a lot of hotels will need to adapt to technology for revenue management. So we're looking here at real-time big data and artificial intelligence. And as much as before these were really nice buzzwords, now they're going to have to become really serious words. And hoteliers will have to realize what really real-time means, what really big data means, and what really AI means before they start selecting the technology, because there's no more room to make a mistake and risk anything to check next year if it has worked or not. And following the revenue management technologies, all the other very close departments, technologies will have to reinvent somehow. We're going to hear from Ali later on, but distribution needs to change. We're no longer looking at manual inputs in the extranets of our prices because they're going to be changing very quickly. We need to have connectivity, two-way connectivity, so there's no manual interventions, but it's like real time. We need to reach where a customer is in more places than ever before, because some hotels have lost the major market. So they're going to have to be looking for some new solutions. And we're going to have to learn how to distribute value much more. We're not going to be talking about driving the prices down or driving the prices up, but selling the actual value, where safety will be a key ingredient of that value. And as we have revenue management and distribution, marketing technology will need to adapt as well. We have a unique situation to drive our business back to a direct channel. So this is the time where either hotels will start picking up with their Google AdWords advertising and focusing on content on the websites and flexibility on the websites. And that will need to be, again, managed by AI, not by technology, not by a person, in order to make it right. Otherwise, we're going to turn back and go back to when a large online travel agencies have dominated our distribution. So finalizing and finishing, we really need to reinvent for tomorrow's logic. And the most important thing is to start thinking with tomorrow's logic. That tomorrow's logic is almost now. Hotels are starting to reopen, and that's the future of hospitality. I think it's positive, fantastic, considering my probably subjective approach, but really to be in the objective side, we need to consider that technology. Thank you for that. That's mine, 15 minutes. Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for sticking to the time and for the very insightful presentation. So you're talking about an old logic, and I have a question for you. I definitely agree with the fact that there is in general a resistance to change that is quite strong, and in today's context, there is therefore an opportunity here for us to address this and come with a new logic, as you say, a new solution. So you're talking about the perception of feeling safe as a guest. Do you think this pandemic will affect this in the long run, or will it be a transition going back to our old habits? Are we moving towards being obsessed by hygiene and cleanliness?
I think it's going to remain a big part of our life, the same way as ecologic focus has been more and more part of our lives. But it's very hard to say in what extent, because from like I've said in the presentation, once we're emotional and once we really logic, we have the lockdowns, and you have seen the situations either in US or in UK where we are on the lockdown, but then people go out on the street and clap, and they group all together, masses of people, to clap for the National Health Services. Now, that's emotional, but not really wise thing to do, considering everybody's under threat of getting a virus. And there may be people just not caring about the virus, but starting to travel and even spreading the virus. So there will be, the next months will be really crazy, and they will be mixed. But in the longer term, I think we will have some habits that will remain with us for good.
Thank you, Chris, for your answer. I don't know if Ali or Ryan have something to share in regards to this specific subject, or...
Certainly, I would echo those points that Chris has made. I think we've got to look at perhaps at how the terrorist attacks in the last 20 years has really impacted security, and how we've considered travel, and the way that's changed the way we journey and the way we look after guests from a security perspective. Although security threats have lessened, security has never necessarily been dropped from the agenda. So I think this health, hygiene, and the threats associated will certainly be very much at the forefront of plans and strategies and regulations and policies throughout every industry, and in particular how that's handled within travel.
Thank you, Ryan. Ali, would you like to add something? Or?
Yeah, sure.
No?
Sure. Yeah, understanding the the factors that is affecting the pricing is very important. And now this crisis is really, from the other angle, is helping the accommodation owners to understand that setting the price is a sophisticated thing. And it is not easy to predict by taking the things manually. And now each year, as Ryan also said, security, we are also now in the COVID situation. Each year, we are adding additional complexity to predict and to forecast our revenues. Somehow accommodations from now on, they need to actually consider to take the technology into their business to help to predict their future.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Chris, for your presentation again. So I think it's time to turn to Ryan. Ryan Ents, who is again director and lead consultant at Ents Marcoms. And Ryan, today you will tell us about how new technologies allow business to take a new approach, adapt different business model while increasing operation efficiencies and market opportunities. So we are listening to you, Ryan.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So we're a specialist travel technology marketing consultancy. I've been working in technology for nearly 20 years now, and luckily within the hospitality and travel industry for over 12 years. So been exposed to a lot of new technologies and developments across the industry, and certainly seeing how travel and hospitality adopt technology in some circumstances at different stages compared to other industries. And I think it's particularly due to the complex nature of especially hospitality that has meant that we, in some respects, are behind the adoption curve for new technologies. But when looking at our current situation, I think it's important for us to consider some of the big changes that have happened in society and what impact that's had on the way we approach work and business and operations. And particularly the biggest change was post-war and how we moved from industrial to computerization. And the COVID-19 and the fact that we're all at home accessing this digitally is just now the force towards moving from computerization to digitalization. And how we can now start to embrace this, not, as Chris mentioned, as an add-on to what we do, but it's very much within the heart of how we deliver what the services and the products, and how we help both staff and guests and travelers with the entire experience. So that means looking at the decade, right? So over the last 10 years, so much has changed. Since the last recession, we've had the smartphone, Wi-Fi has become standard. We've seen many more apps start to replace standard websites. And we've seen this emergence of new tools and devices and technologies can sit in room, across the hotel, or in the palm of your hand that gives you instant access to pretty much anything that you want. But how much of it do we actually look at it through the eyes of the consumer? How often do we actually look at the products and service that we're delivering, not as a business, but as our guests would expect, or even as ourselves would expect? We have had the battle of the Wi-Fi charges in yesteryear, and Amazon has really demonstrated the power of online sales. The growth in budget airlines themselves have potentially created, in some instances, false economies due to the number of airlines that have gone bankrupt or had to be acquired by other businesses. And this idea of what a unicorn is and these IPOs. And if we look at the technologies and some of the businesses that have disrupted the last 10 years, these have had an impact on the way that we are delivering services. Airbnb really opened the market and showed us how hosts, individual people, can have a much closer relationship with their guests, being able to provide information for their travel, be able to message directly into the palm of their hands, details on their stay, how they can access the apartment, and be able to have that immediate digital service that at the moment, really only the large international hotel chains have been able to achieve. We look at Slack, which has really changed the way that we have worked, especially in technology companies. And that was only emerged in 2009. WeWork, whilst there's questions over the survival of WeWork, it has also adapted the model in serviced offices. Omio itself, how it's starting to bring together the transport networks around the world and what impact that's going to have on the way that people travel and the opportunities for transport companies to provide a higher level of service. We've seen Deliveroo now start to turn hotel restaurants into hotel deliveries and takeaways. And TikTok, whilst it was launched in 2016, it's now at this point in time that it's really having a big impact. So we're going to see so much change over as many more companies start to adopt some of these technologies. As I mentioned, nearly 10 years ago, there was this big debate over Wi-Fi and whether we should be offering Wi-Fi for free. And this interesting data here from the Hotel Internet Services shows how people are using Wi-Fi. So what is the expectation of a delivery from the hotel? Well, in actual fact, whilst hotels are expected to deliver Wi-Fi, there's not necessarily the necessity for the hotel to actually provide that service themselves, but to look towards third-party providers who are able to provide much more sustainable systems, also support the security risks and provide the bandwidth that is required by the guests. One thing that we have to recognize, and particularly for smaller hotels, where sometimes their Wi-Fi is both for the business operations of the property, but also for the guests, that then starts to have a real impact on how well they can actually use the internet to deliver service to their guests, whilst guests potentially having their own network that they add to. So looking at new models of Wi-Fi services is certainly one of the initial ways that hoteliers should be looking at how they could be delivering an improved service. I mean, there's a number of different ways in which customers view the service that you provide, and also how hoteliers view it. And this is why it is important to look at it from a guest perspective and understand that actually maybe they don't expect as much as you think they do. In the hospitality Wi-Fi study, 27% of guests would purchase upgraded Wi-Fi if the price was reasonable to support some of their use of maybe their smartphone or their iPad, whether it be watching Netflix or using it for business purposes. So there is a great opportunity here to look at new revenue opportunities from existing infrastructure that you've got in place. The customer journey is definitely evolving, as we can see through the influence of social media, online digital engagement, the dominance of online travel agents, and certainly the opportunity now to be able to get direct bookings, especially as maybe international travel is not going to be be available to us for quite some time, but how we use our national and local and regional networks to be able to get the reservations and the bookings into the hotel. The role of serviced apartments and holiday rentals has also changed significantly, and what people's expectations are, and particularly holiday rentals and service apartments giving the opportunity now for people to have that social distancing. With looking at how you can diversify the products that are available, we've already seen Marriott, for example, move from just purely providing rooms to also looking at a more diverse range of product. So when it comes to how you're engaging with the customer through digital marketing, it's how you don't just look at competing with hotels, but the full experience across the travel journey. and during their stay. So potentially, holiday rentals could in fact be a key competitor to you. And this is where we've seen a lot more move towards experiential travel, and certainly the introduction of new digital services through, say, hotel apps, or being able to provide that information in the palm of people's hands to be able to make the most of their stay and their travel. And especially at this time, we're going to see people wanting to make the most of their investment. People's income has been reduced. People's disposable income won't be like it has been for the last few years, but they're going to want to make sure they get the most from every single dime that they invest. So how can you make new products, services, and information available to them pre-stay and throughout their stay, so they can make the most of their holiday plans? This has now moved to the fact that everything is 24/7. People can make online bookings as and whenever they want to. And we've seen this rise in online web portals. We've also seen a move from downloadable computer software and applications to moving to online cloud services. We've moved from maybe commission-based to subscription-based services, and we've also seen the needs for remote access, particularly at this time. So what you need to be looking at are those systems that allow your staff to work from home, or to be able to access the platforms wherever they are in the property. There's going to be a need with the reduction of revenue, you're going to probably have to cut staff, or you won't be able to bring as many staff on as you used to. So not chaining them to desks, but allowing them to be able to move around the hotel. It's about giving them the devices and access to the platforms that they need to be able to deliver that service wherever they are at any given point during their working day. And what's important here is that you start to involve your staff in the implementation of these tools and technologies. Ask them about their experiences of staying in a hotel, but also their challenges of delivering the expected services to their guests. How could technology help them deliver that? And they often may know what is more expected, because they're the ones also using these digital technologies day in, day out, because we're all smartphone users. But everything really does have to be accessible. Certainly one for me, as we look at how the industry is delivering digital guest services, is looking at Hilton, Hyatt, Accor, or particularly Radisson Edwardian with its auto assistant Edward. Now, a lot of these companies have built these systems, but there's a lot of off-the-shelf systems now available, particularly to independent small groups and medium-sized chain hotels, where they don't have to make that investment in research and development and technology, but they can go to existing providers. There's a big change happening, and the traditional models of revenue generation is changing substantially. And in particular, if we took at Netflix, for example, their DVD business generated 76.2 million revenues earlier in 2019, in the second quarter of 2019, and this has dropped by over 50% since then. So we can see that we really are moving very quickly from the old delivery model. And that's why guest expectations will need to be put at the forefront, in either to be able to get returning guests, and if you're a chain, returning guests to maybe other properties, but also word of mouth. People talk about their great experiences, and they share the destinations and places that they've been and stayed. And so it really is important to look at how you can tailor what you're offering, and how you can make it more bespoke. Certainly looking at upselling, cross-selling technologies, utilizing guest messaging in order to tap into them at the right time to provide them additional service or product or promotion. With reduced contact as well, we're going to see an increased use of digital services. And in particular, if you think about all those information packs that you get into a hotel room, that are several pages of printed documentation, about turning those more digital. And we can see that there is this desire from guests for this transition. They want more customized messaging. They're used to making last minute bookings on mobile devices. So, how easy is it for people to make a direct booking for your hotel by mobile? We're looking at millennials. Now, millennials, are 26, 27 and above. So we've got younger generations that are indeed digitally native. I started using a computer when I was 14 years old. And so the idea of what is online doesn't exist anymore. You've got the real world and you've got digital. And we keep talking about the online experience, but that is the experience that we have to consider as the primary touch point when we're talking to customers and guests in a low touch economy. They're also going to have to think about how you're going to be able to access the hotel and reduce that social point of contact, in particular things like digital room key technologies and digital guest books go that far in helping you to achieve that. We are in the era of automation. Chris mentioned about artificial intelligence and the need for greater integrations and interfaces. And it's really important to start looking at those platforms that are accessible to other technologies, to be able to have the data you need to make those technologies work. So when you are talking to the technology companies, understand what their connections are. How do they work with your CRM and property management system? Are they talking to each other? And then how are you using those technologies to bring smart working and get the right skills from your workforce working at the right times in order to improve that productivity, but not forgetting the fact that people still want that human element. So when do you stop using automation and then provide that direct human-to-human experience? And at the moment, as we start to move out of the lockdown, we know that we're not necessarily going to be travel far and wide. Therefore, having the right guest connections is essential. Geolocation technology is going to come to the forefront over the next few months, certainly, where you're able to tap into your local community to be able to send them promotions and offers, bringing as many people from locally as you can to create that community around the hotel, perhaps like it was even before I was born, back 100 years ago, where the pub and the hotel was central to a town or a city. So how do you play that part, and how do you develop those partnerships within your local area with other businesses and service providers, and tap into the customers or the potential audience that are right on your doorstep, and providing using your CRM in a right way in order to target with relevant offers. And as I mentioned earlier about your ancillary revenues, so using those technologies at the right point. And working with your teams is going to be essential in identifying the technologies. Give people more autonomy, I say. Help them find those systems that are going to make their job easier so that they have more time to focus on the creative and strategic elements, as well as more personalized customer service. Some guests will want to speak to someone, so make that time available and review the value, and that is the most important part. What is the value you're offering to your guests, and how do they quantify that value themselves? So when you're looking at buying technology, it's worth looking at the new and snazzy, but going perhaps one step down. Early adopters are great if you have an ambitious team, but sometimes, as Chris mentioned, that you need tried and tested technology. So look at the case studies, find similar type hotels as to you, find out how they're using these tools to understand what the lifetime investment is versus the value for the guest. Look at how guests are interacting online and different types of consumer apps that they use, and how you could tap into some of those consumer apps. And sometimes you might need to change the business and drop some of the services where are not giving you a high enough profit margin in order to find those where you can continue to earn, even if it's on a commission basis. I think the important thing here is that you are a guest, and what is it that it enhances your experience when you're traveling? What are your experiences as a guest for your whether it's friends or younger family members? What are their challenges going to be? And how can you work with your team to solve those problems? Channel management and distribution, making sure that's flexible and dynamic, as well as looking towards traditional distribution with travel agencies and wholesalers. And I think that this is going to help you cover as many bases as possible. And there are plenty of systems out there that allow you to be able to connect those third parties. And finally, the future, where do I see that going next? Well, we talk of digital transformation, and this can only really be achieved by transforming the entire organization and the people around you. Technology doesn't solve that question. It is about people and processes, and to bring that automation or efficiencies to focus on the experience. Chris mentioned artificial intelligence, machine learning, how you utilize data and how much data you need, because sometimes you don't need as much data as you may think you need in order to be personal and to provide more targeted offers. And then you're looking at payment systems. And I think this is going to be the big breakthrough that we're going to have to achieve over the next at least 5 years, is the role of blockchain and know your customer. So how do you do identity checks? Will we see the digital passports and how we deal with transactions? Everything now, especially here in the UK, there's less cash being transacted, and it's all about digital credit payments. So how do you make sure that you've got the right systems in place to make sure that you've got the right security in order to know your customer, secure your payments, and protect your guest? So that's hospitality and the future of technology from my perspective. There's a lot of different platforms out there, so feel free to get in contact with me if you've got any questions relating to any of those systems.
Thank you, Ryan, for this rich overview, and there are many takeaways here on how to use technology to address the change that is coming. We received some interesting questions actually that I think that can work for the three of you. So as we're running a little bit out of time, I think we'll jump to Ali's presentation, and we'll address the questions at the very end to all of you. And I just want to remind our participants that all the recordings and the slides that you've shared, Ryan, Chris, Ali, will be available to everyone after the webinar. So Ali, I will turn to you now. Ali Beklen, you're the founder and managing partner at HotelRunner, and today you will tell us how to keep winning in a turbulent travel economy using the power of data and technology. So Ali, we're listening to you.
Thank you, Caroline. Today, actually, when we started to see the impact of the COVID, we came together internally with the team, and we said, hey, how we can help the industry, how we can help to understand what's happening in the industry, and how we can help the industry to predict the future. And then finally, we actually came to and we built the internal framework. We said, hey, let's start with understanding how are we dealing with the pandemic. So we started asking this question to all parties that is involving into the travel value chain. And we saw there are three options. We got three different answers actually from the participants. We saw that they're making panic because we have too many unknowns on the table about the future. So that's why we are making panic. we are trying to identify the unknowns. However, we are not becoming successful because we are having too many unpredictable news from the media. And option B, we saw that some countries, some participants from particular countries, especially from developed countries, we saw that they are looking for solutions. But they are saying we are not making panic, but we are looking for a solution, but they don't have any idea where to start. They said we would like to start from the new partnership perspective. We would like to actually have idea how we can sell in the future. They say how we can actually transform this process to an advantage by looking at or by adding new amenities or facilities or by investing into our premises. So they were looking for a solution just to convert this process to an advantage for their businesses. And option C, we saw some businesses in the value chain, they are really managing the panic. So they know what will they do for the future. They have very well knowledge in terms of managing their finance, in terms of predicting their future, in terms of revisiting their existing relationship with the partner. So these options and these answers were really eye-openers internally, especially in the team. And we said, in order to, just a second. Okay, I guess it's switching. I'm clicking, but it's not switching. All right, excellent. So, and we said, hey, the answers are very obvious. And we decided to help our properties to understand their consumers first. We said, hey, let's give an idea what's happening from the consumer's perspective, because at the end of the day, they need customers, they need guests, they need consumers. So we are working as a strategic partner. We are working very closely with Google, and they are sharing some survey results with us as well. And they're asking to their consumers about their travel plans. And we saw that the consumers are still open to traveling. However, if you look at their habits, they are not looking to travel abroad. So they are looking for nearby spacious places. They are looking for some isolated places. And on the other hand, we looked at our own data, whether this is realistic or not. Because if this is a real thing, then someone today in some particular countries, even today they are traveling. We saw that some countries recovery has been started, especially in Southeast Asia. If you look at our own data, I'll come to that point as well. And also in US, for example, the domestic travel is still live. But however, when we look at our data, it was definitely satisfying the Google survey results. Most of the travelers were actually booking much more spacious or isolated places. And on the third side, the adoption phase has started, what we are seeing in some verticals. Somehow the businesses are starting to adopt their businesses as well. For example, let me give you an example from the hotel perspective. If you're running 1,000-room hotels, what we started to see from the industry is they said, hey, I'm not going to be opening up my 1,000 rooms in this year. I'm going to be only opening up my 100 rooms, which are the most spacious, most isolated rooms. For example, I'm talking about presidential suites or some kind of suites having 2 rooms, 3 rooms, which families can easily stay. And in that case, they are saying, hey, I would like to increase my prices because I'm going to be opening up only the 10% of my rooms. However, the consumers are already willing to pay more. They are just looking for much more isolated and clean places. And on the other hand, if you look at the EMEA perspective, I just put the EMEA data here. From the travel plans perspective, EMEA guests are not looking for any holiday for their home countries. 50% of the existing population today, they somehow canceled their holidays. However, we have still 50% on the table. They are somehow looking for visiting the nearby places, and even some of them, roughly about 20% of them, they will be traveling in the next 3 months. So they are consumers. They will be definitely traveling. However, we would like to hear open this data and make this data available to the accommodation owners and to the travel industry, because they need this data to take their position for each vertical that they are managing. And if you're curious about, if you're curious about, are they still considering an abroad for a holiday? Yes, they are still considering. To go abroad for a holiday. However, they are looking for much more safer countries in terms of COVID. Not only from the security perspective, but from the COVID perspective. As you can imagine, more than 50%, roughly about the 70% on average, guests today, they are not going to be going holiday abroad during the next maybe 9 months. So what this data is telling to us, most of today's accommodation owners will take their position to welcome their domestic visitors, mostly. Maybe instead of spending their very valuable money and time to welcome some guests from abroad, maybe it would be great to focus much more on welcoming the domestic guests. And obviously, another question will be on the table. What I'm going to do. So which offering I'm going to provide to my potential guests, very limited potential guests. So in order to answer this question, obviously, we need to understand the consumer's mindset during the booking process. And if you look at the data, they are looking for free cancellation, because we are in a very volatile situation, and they would like to protect their money, as well as they don't want to take their health into the risk. So that's why they are looking for free cancellations. Even they are looking for flexible date options. They don't want to book some date in for specific dates. They don't want to make booking for date A and B. Maybe they would like to book some slot in July timeframe instead of making a precise booking. So they are looking for flexible date options. Obviously, each crisis are creating an expectation to find some deals and discounts. If you look at this data, you will see that consumers are looking for somehow deals and discounts. Maybe in this case, in order to capture the limited foreign visitors, so maybe you can make discounts for visitors coming from abroad, but you can't make discounts for the domestic visitors. In that case, maybe you can, as accommodation owner, balance your revenue. Obviously, the personal health and safety information is very important, especially as you can see here for Italy and Spain and UK. Those are the top 3 countries hit by the virus. So that's why if you are considering to welcome the UK and Italian and Spanish consumer guests, you have to satisfy their personal health and safety information requirements. And obviously, the money back guarantee is also important. They would like to see the flexibility of maybe making early checkouts. So they would like to have this kind of flexibility in the booking. And as you can see here, most of them are not in this case in this survey. Most of them are not considering even making the holiday this year. So in order to actually make this data and make this framework available for the community, we came together internally and we said, hey, let's show our contribution for COVID-19 to the industry. Since we are processing the billions of worth of reservation data and processing millions of transactions in the system, in this year, we made our data publicly available. Even you don't need to type your email. So it's not driven by marketing purposes. We said, hey, let's democratize the data access with HotelRunner Pass, and let's make it available globally. this was really actually helpful for the industry to take some actions by looking at the data. And if you look at our own data, you will see that obviously you will see all negative growth rates. However, you will see some recovery after September. If you look at this data, what we are advising to our accommodation owners, especially if you are running, for example, a hotel in the resorted coast, maybe they need to consider to expand their season to cover the November timeframe, because we see unexpected demand for November timeframe, for the December timeframe. So some hoteliers, especially serving to summer holidays, maybe they may need to consider to expand their season. And average stay duration is a very key metric for the industry. During the COVID bookings, surprisingly, we saw that average stay duration comparing with the last year, it grew roughly about on average 1 day. Even in some months, as you see here, it grew roughly about 2 days, which is very important. Because if you would like to incentivize some guests who is actually willing to stay more, you need to have a better understanding of the average stay duration here. And if you look at the industry average, maybe instead of incentivizing the shorter period of time stay, maybe this year it would be great to incentivize the longer period of stays. Oops. I guess I missed some slide, I'm sorry. Where is it? So it's freezing, I don't know why. Okay, so another thing, another key pillar to win in a turbulent economy, obviously looking for new partnerships, as Chris perfectly mentioned, and Ryan. So for me, mentioning to Ryan's presentation as well, the guest expectations are evolving, and they are somehow driving the industry to be much more connected than ever. So you have to look for new partners who is actually serving to your guests. And who is actually serving to your connected trip experience. So that's why maybe what we are saying during the COVID process, it is a time to look for new partnerships in a digital environment. Maybe you need to look for new payment options to welcome your domestic visitors. Maybe you need to look for new sales channels, new tech providers, new local services, just to serve your guests during the COVID and in the post-COVID economy as well. And the last thing is, obviously, you need to consider to digitalize your business as well. So if you are not digitalizing somehow, if you are not digitalize your business, your direct channel, your sales channels, if you are not using any distribution system, now what we are saying, it is time to consider to move your business from offline to online. What we are saying always to the industry, you are spending tons of money to build a very beautiful accommodation just to give a great experience to your guests. So your digital experience that you are providing to your guests has to be same as you are providing in the accommodation. So and on the other hand, during the COVID process, we know that most of the accommodation owners today suffering from managing their costs. So that's why we actually democratize the access to the technology as well, and we try to make the technology as much as affordable for the travel, just to show our contribution. And we made half a percent of the whole platform for free. It is even today. It is easy to access. It is easy to move your business from offline to online without spending any penny even today. So in order to show our contribution, we actually looked at our data. We actually made the survey to our audience, and we collected the data. And as part of our COVID framework that we built internally, we shared our data with the audience, with the travel industry. And then obviously we invited all of our partners globally, including partners from US, east to Japan, we invited them to provide this kind of data to all of our partners as well. Thank you. We can't hear you, Caroline. You're on mute. Caroline, we can't hear you.
So sorry, I was on mute. So I will start again. I was saying, thank you, Ali, for the quality of your presentation. I think the subject was quite interesting today because we received many questions during these 3 presentations, and unfortunately we are unable to answer all of them. So I will pick three of them, and I suggest that one of you answer once for each. Of course, we will be able to send different answers afterwards for all questions to all the attendees. So first, maybe let's start with a question maybe more for Ryan. Ryan, you were talking about how the customer journey is changing, including the notion of sustainability. We have actually a question here. Are there any trends on sustainable technologies apart from digitalizing brochures, etc.?
Yeah, I think this goes into the facilities management of your properties. It's looking at waste, it's looking at waste disposal, water, wastage and leakage. It's looking at how your energy is used and monitoring that, and having those automated sensors in order to manage lighting and heating. I think those are the things to look at in order to manage your operating costs more efficiently. As well as make the most of your spaces for common spaces for your guests to give them the best experience.
Thank you, Ryan, for this. So another question that maybe I will direct to Chris. We have a question from Nicholas. Why real-time big data or AI are buzzwords?
Yes, I used a term called buzzwords because they really are very trendy words used by almost every technology out there. So in order to actually understand, if you're searching for a tool that has a real-time or big data or AI, you have to dig in a little bit further in understanding what they mean. So there are companies that may say we push prices every time we change the price, and that's called real time. But what you really mean is how often do you check the data, how often do you analyze the data, process the data through the algorithms, and then suggest the forecast and then suggest the solution. That's what real time means, but it's been abused a little bit by some others because the word is very trendy and popular. Big data, everybody's talking about big data, and as much as a lot of data already means big data, but you need to take into consideration looking at different sources of data and different types of data, and then have some sort of technology or algorithms that combine all these data together to count or to measure the correlation between the two. So it's not only a lot of data. Big data means really massive different sources data and already processed, because we don't want to be overwhelmed. We're already overwhelmed with data. We already spend 75% of our times as revenue managers analyzing the data. We actually need conclusions from that data. And that's why AI comes. And if AI is able to process that data, then that's great. If you're using AI for some sort of small thing just to actually put it on your website to say we're using AI, that's not really going to work. So if we're looking for different technologies, we really need to drill down into details of the meanings of these popular words, so that we don't make a mistake and learn from it in a year's time. We don't have a space for that.
Thank you, Chris. So I think we can have a last question actually that was addressed by German, and maybe Ali, you can help us with that. So with everything turning to high tech, what essential skill set would you recommend for tourism and hospitality graduates?
Yeah, they have to know their industry. As travel tech providers, we don't want to add additional, let's say, educational skills into their life. So because each travel tech provider, if they add additional requirements in terms of education. They will, in that case, they will stop managing their properties. They will continue with learning the new technologies. We don't want that. So that's why we are having a huge responsibility. We have to take the huge responsibility here in terms of building an educationless environment for the property owners. What we want them to only look for the changes that is happening in their industry. For example, the guest expectations are changing. So that's why they have to adopt and they have to look for solutions just to have a better connectivity with their guests. Everything is starting with the guests. So that's why we are expecting them to only look for the mega trend changes and the micro trend changes that is happening in their industry. If they observe that they have to, for example, somehow be digitalized for accepting the guests or for giving them a better experience on their booking engine, or during in the property, if they would like to give them a much more better experience in terms of leveraging their amenities and facilities, they have to be aware of changes. That's it. We are just expecting this one. We don't want to add new layer of complexity in terms of managing their properties. As travel tech providers, I guess we are taking a huge responsibility here to make their life easier. So this is all I can say. So educational environment we have to build for the industry.
Thank you, Ali. So basically, hospitality graduates should continue to focus on hospitality and how to welcome their guests, which is the most essential part of traveling. I guess we want to be welcome in the right way, and hopefully very soon again. So thank you to all of you again. For this, we will send the answers to the rest of the questions by emails. And I think we were quite lucky to have some valuable insights today. So again, you're able to watch the previous edition and this edition on imeethotel.com. So feel free to visit the site. We will be back now in 2 weeks to cover next time human resources and staff management in the COVID time, before addressing business sustainability. And finally, we will have a last edition before the summer about the subscription economy in travel. So stay tuned. And I just take this opportunity to remind you again that this webinar is an initiative of Bidroom. So you're very welcome to contact us should you want to know more about our no commission booking platform. So thank you for participating. Thank you, Ryan, Chris, Ali.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So stay safe, healthy, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.